Guys,
Welcome devs to the Pixel Zone. Grab your badge and claim your throne. Retro vibes with future skill. Time to bend those flows to your will.
Power it up, we're in dev mode with David, Wyatt, and cheat code load.
Scope to scope, JSON inside. No more clicks, we code it right.
Supercharge the flow, let your data stream. Building faster, cleaner, live the dream.
Clipper powers tools that shine. In the flow game, you define the line. Fortis got fire, Isabel sharp. Marcel drops bars like a Stinray harp. With browser tools that break the mold. Extensions forged in power gold.
View it all with a single scan. Visual docs like no one can.
History clean, formatted tight. Watch your dev time take flight.
Supercharge the flow, let your canvas glow. JSON magic in every row.
No more guessing, now you see.
Automation in God tiers free.
Bonus levels, Easter eggs.
Retro overlays with pixel legs.
Drop your cheat codes, win some gear.
The arcade stream of the dev year.
So press start and lock the game with
Flow Studio, earn your name.
now get ready, let it show.
Time to supercharge the flow.
hello everyone. Welcome back to the M365 show. I'm 40 or 40s, as you already know now from the music intro. Today joined by my co-hosts Marcel and Isabel. Hello everyone. Woo.
Hello.
Nice. Looking at the right camera. 1, 2, 1, 2. Great. Today we are diving deep into something that's going on to revolutionize how you develop Power Automate flows. And a special thank you to our sponsors, Power Templates. The ultimate
Power Template
way to resell your apps and workflows. And also MyCon Design Kit from Lukas Pavelka, which, by the way, was recognized as MVP. You! Congratulations, Lucas. I will continue to clap after the show, but at the moment, I'm happy for you. So take this. If you're listening, congrats. From design to code with zero effort, MyCon Design Kit. Okay.
Thank you for
Power
two.
Templates
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
is your platform to share, license, and market digital solutions. Developers reach more customers and monetize easily. Buyers find expert solutions fast and connect directly. With flexible licensing, analytics, and automation, Power Templates helps you grow and innovate. Take the next step today.
Well, thank you for that. We're super excited for today's episode because we got a special guest with us, David Wyatt, a Power Platform MVP and the genius behind some seriously powerful browser extensions that are changing the way we build in Power Automate. Welcome, David.
Yeah, welcome, David.
Thank you. That's high
Welcome to our
praise there.
show. Before we jump into the amazing tools we want to discuss, please, tell us something about yourself.
Well, thank you for having me on today. So I've been a Power Platform developer for, it's over 5 years now. Feels like a lot less and sometimes a lot longer. And I was kind of the quintessential citizen developer. So I worked in a store, the store manager, and I used the OG automation kind of citizen development tool, Excel. Back then we were called Shadow IT. So I got good at Excel generally. That got me into operations. And then I started tinkering with VBA, which was the ultimate tool to kind of automate your life. And it's such a great feedback cycle of learning something, automating something, getting more time back. And you're getting this lovely positive kind of feedback circle. So after a while, I had like half my week was free from automating everything. And then I discovered Power Automate, which was like, like the halo moment in my work week, because now instead of me having to run it and keep an eye on it, because Excel was notoriously inconsistent, I could run it in the cloud. And I loved it, and I totally got into it. And it kind of really gave me new opportunities. Another technology called Blue Prism launched in my company, which was a desktop automation like Power Automate Desktop. I started using that. And that basically then allowed me to go from a store manager into an IT department. And now I'm like an SME expert and helping drive the strategy of the Power Platform organization. So my story is a great example of what's so good about the Power Platform and what opportunities it can open up for you.
Sounds really great. So I want to give us all a small overview of about which topics we want to talk. First, we take a look about Power Automate tools, direct editing extension. The second part would be the Flow utility, its former named Flow Clipboard, and copy paste across environments tool. We take a look at auto review and automated flow analysis tool, the JSON Formatter, and we talk about getting started and best practice of all of this tool. And the sixth segment for today is we talked in our last show about the automation center, and Isabel will show us, give us a small overview about the automation center. And at the end, we have a Q&A session, but today it's a little bit shorter as in our last show. So I think we have more than 50 questions as in our last show, and we pick up 3 questions today. And so if there are more questions, we'll answer this in the chat. Yeah. Okay.
Everything is also moderated by our wonderful background host, Mirko, who is doing the moderation in the background. So if you want, say hello to Mirko as well. So thank you very much. Let's start with what I think, our honest opinion, is our most game-changing tool, or your most game-changing tool, perhaps also mine. The Power Automate tools extension that lets you edit flows as JSON directly in the browser. This sounds almost too good to be true.
Yes. Well, I think it is. It was
okay. Finished.
Yeah, there we are. Like low-code tools are great, and they always do 80% of things that you do really, really well and really, really quickly. But often those kind of niche cases can start to kind of push low-code solutions. And I often find that 80% of the work I can get done very quickly, and that last 20% takes more effort just by the fact that you get into the nuances of things. And that's when like pro-code solutions come along to help out. And the simple fact is getting into the code occasionally, even if it's not all the time, can be really, really useful in doing kind of certain niche cases and improvements. So I kind of low-code engineer, did a little bit of VBA and a little bit of code, But I kind of certain times I really wanted to get into the code and see how things worked and kind of make some updates, which is quite hard when it's UI. You're kind of quite contained by your screen and you have to open things and close things. So I was looking for a solution. I was considering going over to Logic Apps because they have a code editor and Power Automate very similar. And then by look, somebody created this fantastic extension, and I'll share my screen just to show you what it does. If I can present, share my screen. And like I say, it's great for those cases when you want to transition out of the limitations of the UI and get into the GR of it. So everybody knows your standard Power Automate flow, and this is kind of an example of what I'd really like to show you, kind of some really good use cases. You can imagine that this is a lot bigger, more complicated. At the moment, it's got a couple of SharePoint items, and all of them are hard-coded SharePoint lists. Now, we should all use environment variables. We know that, but legacy code is around. And when we get those situations where we want to update it, we have to click through and find it. Notoriously a pain to do. And what this extension allows you to do is with one click, sometimes you have to give the browser a quick refresh for it to work. So give it a quick refresh. One click. It basically then extracts and gives you the code. And as you can see, it's leveraging the standard VS Code kind of UI. So it's really nice and easy to use. So I can kind of pop in and edit these things. And straight away, I can see these environment variables and things like that that I want to replace. Now, what's really good is I can also find these. So let's say I want to find this. And we've got to find a place simple up here. Now, the great use cases, if we pop back in and edit back to the flow, let's say I want to change these all to environment variables. I'd go in here, I'd find my environment variable if it wants to go off my screen. Come on, Power Automate. Let's get this in. Now, in theory, I would have to go through and find everyone, which 9 times out of 10, you're going to miss one or whatever issue, and it causes challenges. But when we flip to the code view, I've just published it, it means straight away I can leverage that find and replace. Did I come too early? I think I did. Let's try reloading that. Give it a go. And there it is. So we can see here now we've got our environment variable added, and all I need to do is go down and find where it is. There it is. So this is the environment variable I want, and we're going to use that as a replace. And then we're going to find one instance of our SharePoint that we want to get rid of. And straight away we can leverage find and replace, edit everything. And just like we've got there, we've got the validate, just like in Power Automate, checks and gives you the exact same errors and warnings. And we will do the exact same thing when we save and publish it. It will do all the normal checks to make sure your code is working. And that's it now. If you go back over and refresh, you'll see that we've kind of edited the code instantly across on the system.
Awesome.
Yeah, let's have a better one. There we are, environment variable. So you can see, like, trying to do bulk things in your app. If this was one where you've got nesting and nesting and nesting, you're looking, you're searching. With all that situation, it's pain. And likewise, I mean, another good use case I love is when you have that one row connection reference that is linked to a different SharePoint. And every time you try and export, you've got dependency issue. And you're trying to find the one that happens to be the wrong connection. And you're looking, and it's really challenging. But when you get into the code, you can start to see things like here at the top, all your connection references are allocated at the top. So I can start to see that. And what Power Automate does is it basically gives you a sequential SharePoint one. So if there's another SharePoint, it'll be _1, _2, _3. But that means I can straight away see what connection reference on here, and then I can search and find it. And again, do a find and replace. So having this kind of view from above in the code means that you can be really quick and easy to identify things. And that scans out to all the edits. If you want to edit a random file value in there and you don't know where it is in the process and you're searching, you can look through here and do it a lot quicker and easier.
Well, thank you for that overview. So you went over some practical scenarios where it can replace environment variables, data sources, or even code and connection references. Is there any other scenarios that you find really helpful as well?
Yeah, there's a couple of ones that you really want to look into. I mean, a really good one is code reviews. So When you try and do a code review, again, you want that position to see everything and compare things to make sure things work in the same way. And because Power Automate is very nested in, like, you have to click, 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 click to get through. And particularly the new UI enforces only one thing to be open at once. Really hard to validate that everything's consistent. But once you get into code, it's a lot easier. And likewise, when you deal with those what we call monolith big flows, they can be a nightmare in the UI because the web browser can literally struggle to load it, and you're scrolling around and trying to find what's going on. Well, actually, when you go into the code, it loads super quick, easy, and again, you can hop around and go to things by a quick control find. In comparison, it's so much easier to work on those larger kind of flows that you do. The other thing I'd say, and this is a key to all things, I think, is understanding how things work can definitely make you better at what you're working and doing. So understanding how the Power Automate flow is structured and works really helps when you're building things, and it also helps when you're debugging things in particular. You can start to understand how things interact with it. So getting into the code, I really recommend people just from a learning experience and understanding.
Yeah, I think it's it's really interesting this part because I make a lot of logic app development, and the logic app is the code view standard, and for Power Automate not, and we saw the same problems what you say, connectors, variables, reconfiguration. Regarding to that, do you see here any other hidden problems or regarding to code review or code saving? Do you use it in combination with Git or something like else?
I don't, but from a repository situation, it's not as a great idea. I mean, this is stored in Dataverse. This is what's really nice about this code. So in theory, if you wanted to, you could go into Dataverse, export it, edit it, and re-upload it. So there's definitely, from a repository side, if you want to go down that bit, and it's a lot lighter and easier to use. And the way that Power Automate flows, they're all references. So you can see here, like, like the SharePoint in line is referenced for the custom, that potential connection reference. Then that's used for the flow. Same with things like environment variables. They're referenced in there. So it's really easy to swap them out and everything gets updated smoothly and easily. But it's definitely an easier way to export. And if you want to do a repository system, leveraging this code view or out of Dataverse is definitely an option.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Where can people find this extension?
Yeah, it's in the Chrome Developer Store. So if you just go and search for Power Automate tools, it's got quite a few gold stars on it to use. I would call out, and this is my best bit of advice, and here is, I wouldn't try and start from the code review whenever you're building things. It's so much better to leverage the Power Automate, have all your schemas ready or your inputs ready, and does things quick and easy, and then leverage the code view for edits and additions and views of it. Trying to start from scratch. I did try for quite a while. Could I do it from the core? And you lose all the benefits of Power Automate, which is having those connectors easily available to grab and search. So yeah, the call I'd say is don't try and build it from scratch from there, but leverage it as like a really good tool to edit and update, and definitely view a good view of what your flow is doing.
Well, that's awesome. Let's move on to your second tool. Flow Utility, used to be Flow Clipboard, addresses another major pain point: copying actions and scopes between flows or even across different environments. Walk us through how this works.
Yeah, this was kind of my Swiss Army knife of development tools. I always say my superpower is the fact that I'm lazy and I get bored, which is why I love Power Automate.
Exactly, the superpower and driver of all developers. So, well, actually.
Exactly.
The better.
So every time I do something, if I do it more than once, I want to streamline it and I want to automate it, and that's why I love Power Automate. I love automation tools. But then you also realize that as a developer, we have our own workflows and things, and we want to automate and streamline that. So this utility started off purely as the fact that there were certain actions that I wanted to reuse across, and there's templates that Power Automate provide, but they're not my templates, and there's certain things I want to do. So I wanted a place to store them. And the way Power Automate works is when you copy an action, it just puts it in your clipboard, literally in your computer. So I was like, well, can I leverage that? Can I store that? And that's what this tool kind of does. It basically allows you to copy actions and then reuse them. So in this case, this hasn't got exception handling. I can click on exception handling and then I'll pop it in there and it will automatically add it for me. So it allows me to basically reuse these components quickly and easily. And before the days of favorites, I used to have my favorite actions in there, like a get items or whatever in there. So really quick and easy way to do things and move things across. And you can just add any item, just copy it, add to it, and then give it a name. Oops, I can't type. And then what you'll see, basically, then it just adds that in there as a new action. And it just gives you that real quick reflexibility of using the same tools over and over again. And you can also share it with the developers, and you end up kind of creating like a suite of kind of like standardization. If you've got certain things that you want in everyone, like exception handling or how you deal with a CSV, instead of having to build out like a flow or subflow or documentation, you can just save it in there and just copy and paste it across.
So if I look at this, I think at Nintex, do you know that? So they had a functionality in it that names action sets. So that means you have a possibility to put in some action set that you need for time. Oh, that's really interesting. Regarding to managing multi environments, do you have any production scenarios or production tests and dev scenarios that helps?
Yeah, this really isn't aimed for your dev, test, and prod, because in theory, what you want there is your deployment cycle where you've got a lot more control and managed. But what this is great for is working across the developed dev environments or definitely across different flows and solutions. The way I work in multiple geos, so that'll be a Europe, a US, or whatever it will be. And if you use like those templated or create kind of like share a copy of them, they're limited to those environments. So this tool allows you to work across basically any environment that you're development in. Like I say, it's not ideal for test and prod because realistically you don't want to be editing in test and prod. You want that done in dev, but it definitely allows cross-environmental structure. And like I say, it also is really useful for other developers. So you can set standards and share and almost kind of label out like a standard practice across your teams.
I can see this being a game changer for template creation and reusability. Are there any limitations people should be aware of?
The general limitation is that Microsoft own Power Automate and I'm working off Power Automate. So what generally happens, what this tool does is it literally clicks in to your page. So every time Microsoft makes an update, it generally breaks occasionally. So it's a constant tool of updating. So just be wary that, like I say, it's a Swiss Army knife of tools that need constant maintenance. It does do other things as well. Like if you don't want the new UI, it can force the classic UI, and it has some kind of hotkeys as well, which are quite nice. So in theory, you can do like an Alt-T and it will that's the wrong one. That Alt-T, it will run tests for you automatically without having to key things. And it's got a little bit of a history of all the flows that you've done in case you can't find your flow. So really is this kind of Swiss Army knife of tools that kind of make your life a little bit easier to run. A typical is going to fail and not one of them.
Very cool. So we put all the links regarding to the downloads in the chat. So I think this is important, and I think it's in you find it in our show show notes. Really cool. Any other topics what we need to know about this tool? So or should we go to the next?
Happy to go to the next one.
Okay. The next tool is the auto review tool, an automated flow analysis tool. And give us a short insight to this tool.
Yes, this was my first Chrome extension. And Chrome extensions are really a nice place to start in development because you don't need to host or deploy things. It basically allows you to build and learn pretty quickly. And like I talked about that code review one, it was quite inspiring. It was code view, and I was in my mind was like, if I've got a code review, why can't I read it automatically? And there's a few tools out there for other systems like Blue Prism. I mentioned there's tools that kind of auto code review, but there was nothing for Power Automate. So I was like, well, why not make one? I understand the definition. It's relatively simple to kind of build rules. And that's what I kind of did. It was all around that, you know, that laziness. I don't want to do code reviews over and over again. And the process that we used to have, I don't know what other people like, but I don't want to go into people's code. So we would get them to export it. I'd import it into a code review environment. I'd open it up, I'd review it, I'd do notes, and that process is long and cumbersome. So I was really keen to kind of make that process quick and easy. And that's what drove kind of auto review in respect. It's a relatively simple idea. So let's say we've got this flow here. I can click on here, and what I'll do is I'll select an export to review, and let's go to downloads, exports. Let's have a look at this one as an example. What it will do, it will list all your flows in that solution, and you can see through, and it even gives you a solution and an overview of your exceptions. So let's have a look, see what exceptions we've identified in here. And it's got some predefined rules in here that it will look for. So it's identified missing dependencies, it's identified missing exception handling. And this kind of gives you this really quick guide to look for key things that are missing in your automations. It's the starting place to go. Then on top of that, you can then, like I say, drill into those actual flows. So if we go open it again, and if we looked at this one here, remove connections. And the idea was to give you a couple of things. It was to give you those quick kind of flags that everybody looks at, like naming conventions and exception handling. It was to give like an overall kind of rating to your flow, because in theory, flows can be very different. If I was going to do a code review, I could open up one flow and it'd be super tiny and small, and it takes me 10 minutes, or one could be huge monolith with hundreds of actions. So the idea was that I could give it a kind of a quick reference, and that's where you looked at the number of actions. So I, in my opinion, target 50 actions as the limit that you really want to be doing, and the complexity, because certain actions have higher complexity. If you're using a HTTP action, that to me dictates that it's a more complicated flow with more complicated solution. Is there a reason that you're using it? Can you use the out of the box? So having this kind of quick reference that tells me it's how complex and how many actions in it gives me like an overall score. And then the last bit is to pull all that data which is hidden behind click boxes and different areas, and make it in a way that makes it really easy for me to kind of scan down and see and identify issues. So if we want to look at this one here, it tells me I've got my trigger and it kind of gives me an overview. But then we get into things like, do we have any variables? Not in this one, that's great. Then we look at our actions, so I can see things like the naming convention. What does condition mean? I would want my naming convention to say condition has this or whatever it is. So we keep what it is, but we add a name to make a reference. So again, like I can straight away see that, well, this is not following good naming convention. It's got challenges there. I can quickly look in here to see, does everything have an environment variable that it should do? So if I want to filter here, this will filter everything by environment variable. And I can see here, well, this get connections admin isn't using environment variables. Is that an issue? But actually, no, it's fine. It's using a trigger. It's using a trigger condition. But it allows me quickly to look through and say, well, is there a SharePoint item that's not using an environment variable or anything like that? It's really quick and easy to kind of scan through. And on top of that, the last one you can look here, we've got API actions are put out a little bit different, because again, you're looking for different things like pagination on there. So do any of these new pagination? Well, actually, none of these are get items, it's fine. But if that was a SharePoint list items, I'd be very keen to go, well, why have you not got pagination turned on? Because you know what will happen. In dev, you do less than 100 test runs. It's working brilliant. You go into production and suddenly there's a bug because it's only returning the first 100 items. So it allows me quickly to look there. And again, you can see here, I've got my exception handling, it's missing. Have I got duplicate connection references? Well, no there. So you can see, like, really quickly, we can work through and scan what's happening inside our solution. And additionally, words only show so much. So how do we actually kind of see the diagram of it? And what it allows you to do then is actually kind of do a visual representation. So this one's kind of quite simple. And you can click in and it pulls that information. So you get this lovely view where I don't have to import it, open it up. I can basically quickly and easily open up a solution and have a look around and have some really quick wins around things like known exception handling. Like, does it have this one here? It's got no exception handling. Well, that's straight away a flag to me. And the key and empowerment of having it as a Chrome extension, it means that every developer in theory can use it before they submit a code review. They can look in there and almost know what areas they need to look at. So it's not just a process that you go through on your deployment pipeline, but it's a process that people can build into their own development and workflows.
I really like this. Thank you for sharing this, because I think this would actually help cut down documentation as well. If if you're creating documentation, I am creating a diagram like this already and listing all the variables, especially if it is a very complex flow and you're passing on to somebody else that doesn't really know what the heck is going on. So this is really helpful. What type or like what kind of things does it really flag? I know there is the flow checker when it will say something, or when you found a solution, when you export it, there's a solution checker. How does this check or flag certain things?
Yeah, so you've got the two areas that we look at. Some of it is kind of your what we'll call configuration. So you can go in there and configure what your threshold you want to. So we talked about there, like I said, 50 actions for me is kind of the sweet spot, where you can actually go in there and there's a little config file that you can basically download and upload. It's a little bit more challenging because it's just a basic JSON at the moment, but it gives you an idea of eventually it'll be a nicer UI to use. But if I go into VS Code, you'll see here what you can do is you can go in and set the complexity of these actions. So if this is a SharePoint line, it's a 1, but maybe I want other ones to be higher. An API webhook is 2. So I can configure that. And likewise, naming convention. I'm a big strong believer that every environment, every variable should have a naming convention. Makes it easier to identify and use and understand what it's doing. So in this case, the expectation is that if it's a Boolean, it should start with a B. If it's a string, it should start with an S. And again, you can go in there and edit the number of characters that you want at the beginning, and you can basically play with the settings that you want from an environment variable point of view. We also have the thresholds. I talked about those thresholds of what's green and amber. So you can see here in the moment, like the number of actions, 50 is like too high, 30 is a limit. If you've got a complexity 100, it's too high. And then you can set in numbers, because there's things like variables is a great example where it's very easy to have 20 variables, but then it's also a good question is, do you need variables? Power Automate, everything's global in Power Automate. So 9 times out of 10, you don't really need a variable. So again, we look for things like the number of variables. My expectation is you shouldn't be having more than 5 variables, but you might want to change it and configure however you want to do. So you've got these kind of configurations of things, and you can weight these and your scoring matrix as well. So I can set, like, if it doesn't have an exception scope, how many points does it get? And then, that the 100 point. So you can weight how you want to do your kind of scores to make it a little bit kind of more convenient to your requirements. But the standard things it looks for are environment variables, variable naming. Does it have exception handling? Does it use composers? Because composers are the thing that, if you talk to my colleagues, they laugh, because composers frustrate me a lot. I think it's a very overused, unnecessary action that if I see it in a flow, it generally paints a picture to me that they've not put a lot of effort into optimizing it, because it adds API calls that aren't necessary. It makes tracing where you want what's happening in the logs and the flow, because it basically abstracts things away. And instead of going from A to C, I now go to A to B to C. So I flag the number of composers. Again, there's certain use cases for them, but just like variables, they're overused, and I kind of flag them to look for them.
It's a basic way of encrypting your code by making it more chaotic, right? Put compose everywhere at every point. So just use it. Just use it. Obfuscate everything.
Yes. Yeah, I love it. I love it when somebody would do like 5 expressions, each one in a compose, the next and the next, and you just go, could just nest them all up. But it's great for it's great for debugging, and it is a tool to use. But again, these are things that I would look for instantly, and it kind of flags. So again, if you look at one of the reviews, you'll see the number of composers. It is flagged at the top. right here, number of composers. I always have a main scope, because to catch your exceptions, you want everything in a top level container. So it looks things like that. Very much things that make your processes more stable, scalable, and more easy to share. This is why we code review, really. We code review because we think that we're going to be the only developer that works on it. But if it's a successful automation, then you won't be. Somebody else will have to pick it up and read it and understand it. And like you said, documentation is something that we really need to do as a pain. And it does do a version of documentation. So we talked about there that you get the review. There's also a report version which strips out the scoring and just gives you the kind of raw information. So you can use this for documentation. You can download it, and then it's just a downloaded HTML file that works on its own, so you can embed it into other systems as well. So it's a great tool for making sure that whatever you build in a way that other people can leverage and use it in the right way.
So if I see this too, I'm thinking at the center of excellence. Yeah, I think it's a missing part of the center of excellence, because in center of excellence only the an inventory of the workflows, and this is an deep dive, and I think this is a really missing point, and I think this could help.
Yeah, it's designed also. It might have to give it a refresh. You can run it directly from the live flow as well. So again, if you're in the middle of the development, you want a quick look, you don't want to export it and validate it, you can just pop up and it should give you the live flow. Hopefully, there we go. I can let the current flow and have a look at it again. So that is some challenges of other automation tools. Expectation, you have to export it and then send it to run it. Well, this gives you the option to basically run it live in your session, so you can almost do reactive feedback. And again, I can look here, well, I've got 4 composers in here. I can go back to my flow and find where those 4 composers are, and am I following my naming convention? Yeah, or they all use. Yeah. So it's designed to make sure that it's not just part of your deployment process, but it's also you can use it, like say, in your development workflow.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to say about this tool? Any limitations or anything like that?
There's no limitations except for kind of what it started off as my development tool. So it started off with like things that I look at. I kind of grew it a little bit beyond the extension. So now you can do it as a web app as well if you don't want to install Chrome extensions. And there's also a connector. So I've leveraged a connector now. So if you go in and search for, if I went into here, you will be able to add a new connector. And that does a lot of what it does. So if you want to put it into your pipeline as well, you can see that basically you've got some information where you can get a diagram of your flow. You can get one of those export files, or you could just actually get kind of like a JSON version of all the information that's extracted. So the idea is that you can leverage it into your deployment pipelines as well if you want. So it's kind of growing beyond just the extension now. Okay,
that's really awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So let's move on to the 4th tool, the JSON Formatter. While it may seem simpler than the others, but I imagine it would solve real problems with debugging flows.
Yes, if I've got so many tabs open, let me find the one I want to show. Perfect. Yeah, it's quite a niche use case, but as you said, it's super useful. We've all had it in Power when we get this lovely click to download, and we're trying to debug and understand what's going on in our run logs. Well, generally, you would normally get this, which is, I don't know about you, but horrendous to kind of read and understand. And my old trick was to copy that into VS Code, hit Prettify, look through it, and it was a cumbersome workflow. So what this Chrome extension does is it sits there and runs, and as soon as you open any basic JSON file, not just Power Automate, any one that you're using, it gives you this lovely kind of prettification. So suddenly now I can basically look through and open and explore. You can filter as well. So I can search for keywords, and what it will do is it will filter everything by that. So it allows you want to go in there and debug and understand, why is my flow not happening? Most of the time it might be what we've built, but sometimes the API response is not what you expected. So having a tool like this is really great to kind of drill in and look into issues. Otherwise, you can basically export it and save it and use it for testing and other things as well. So a really useful tool. It's a bit of a niche case, but you'll find that in my particular, it's probably one of my most used ones, because like you said, trying to drill in to understand what's happening is really useful.
I think this must especially be helpful when working with complex API responses in SharePoint data, right?
Oh yeah, anything large as well. I mean, this can slow down a little bit when you get a lot of records.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
But again, trying to work, but at least in this format, in theory as well, if you're quite happy, let's say I want to look at the record 100, I can at least go and find it on the list. Whereas it only renders when you open it, so it will load up. But if you try and open everything up, it will render a little bit slow. But it's still good if you're looking at lots of items. You can be targeted. And often I'll use this in relation to, like when you've got a loop applied to each, and the 50th one has got an issue and it's terrible the amount of information it passes through, because it's going back to here, I can go straight to the 50th item, find what it is, and basically link it back. So it's quite a nice.
I see the waiting as an investment in my future. How do I say, troubleshooting, right? Because I invest some time, I be more patient, and then it makes my life easier afterwards. Because I had to use this in one of my exports or requests and the responses, and it was a hell to go through it. And with your tool, it made my life much more easier. So thank you for that. As a personal experience, I have the opportunity to thank to the developer. So that's it.
I didn't develop this one. I wish I had, but yes, I'd love to take credit. But no, this one wasn't me. But it's something that I use and I actively recommend to developers to use.
Yes.
I think it's one of his tools that seems to be simple, but everyone who knows to work with JSON, this could be saves hours, because it's not easy to read, not easy to understand, and I think it helps a lot.
Yeah, and it goes back to that thing I talked about, like understanding the code and understanding your JSON responses API really helps as a developer. If you don't open up those responses and look at what the API is sending, you miss out on a lot of understanding and helps to debug it. So I recommend this to every developer. Even though you're using a graphical UI empowerment, you think you can get away with just drag and drop, get in the code and have a look at the API responses, look at the JSON responses, look at how the flow is built. It's really insightful, and it really helps you when you hit those kind of awkward debugging moments that you just want to pull your hair out.
After all, low code is not no code. This is what I tend to say always. It makes your life easier. If you have some coding experience, you at least know how the program thinks, I would say, or acts in some ways. And it helps a lot to get some side information, at least for yourself, to debug things. Much easier from my experience. Yeah,
absolutely. Because things in code don't go logically sometimes. The first time you use an async in JavaScript, when you're like, well, why is that value not running? And then you realize that it runs everything at once. So understanding quintessential things like how the order of run and why things return. Why did it break? Well, one time it returned a null, and my API expected it to be a string, and that's really hard to understand unless you kind of get in there. Those little nuances. Yeah, yes. Absolutely right.
Thank you. Then I think we can, or anything to this one. Otherwise, we can move on to the next segment.
Yes, go for it.
No. Okay. Just asking always. I always ask the guests.
It's a simple but very useful one. But yeah,
I love it. That's it. What I want to say. Easy as that. Let's move over to best practices and so on. For people who are excited to try those tools, what's the best way to get started, David? What is your opinion?
Yeah, all my developer tools are on a site called powerdevbox.com. There's a couple more. Again, every time I do something and it annoys me, I basically create a tool to do it. There's one that creates you the exception message in Power Automate, because that's really frustrating. And then there's another tool that allows you to share solutions, because multi-developers can't share connection references and environment variables. So there's loads of little tools there, generally all on powerdevbox.com. They're available on Edge and Chrome, or you can go from whichever the Edge store, the store you want to do. So yeah, just install them and have a play. There is documentation done by me, so probably not the best, but again, I recommend having a read of documentation and just playing with it. But always remember these tools are always basically add on. We talked about it before, like you want to know these things, you want to be a good Power Platform developer, and then you add these tools. Power Auto Review won't help you pass a code review unless you understand kind of the nuances and why it's doing it. So these tools are great to help, but they never really replace kind of knowledge and experience.
Yeah. Are there any best practices for using these tools beside being a good developer and then just reviewing it?
From the best practices, the quirkiness of some of them is that they basically piggyback off your session. So sometimes the token will expire, so you just have to give it a refresh. And like I said as well, when you're working on like a solution, you'll see there in the Chrome extension, it kind of always, for auto review, will always close and reopen, close and reopen. And that's one of the reasons why I created like a website version, because it stays open all the time. So if you're doing more code reviews, I would recommend probably using the website version instead of the Chrome extension. But when you're working as a developer, use the Chrome extension. So yeah, and from the fact most of them are quite self-explanatory. Try and embed them in your workflow, as it's to everybody as well. A lot of these tools take a little bit of kind of usage, kind of repetitive using, especially like the utility icon. If you don't save your important ones and then you don't get any value out of it, but the more you use it, the more basically you kind of get leverage in using it.
Yeah, and my favorite topic, what about governance and compliance considerations?
Yes, always something. So the good news with all of these tools is they all run locally in your browser, so none of this data goes anywhere. I would say, and this is a bigger message for everybody, Chrome extensions are very permissive, so they can do a lot of things. The idea is they basically sit on your browser and they, like you saw there, they can click buttons and they can basically send APIs as you to get the information. So be very wary with Chrome extensions. I always recommend looking at the network traffic in them to see what they're actually doing. You could look at the code. The code, generally chuck it into ChatGPT or something that's pretty good at kind of telling you what to do. I'm trying to open source them. I'm on a path to open sourcing these. I just need to make them a little better coded because I was learning as I do coder. So from a governance side, you have to be very careful with any Chrome extension, and I would always work with your department around what good best practices are on them. But they are designed to be very much run on your machine. They don't interact with the Power Platform. They don't use your password. You don't log in or anything like that. So from a governance side, they sit outside of the Power Platform and more of like a local thing, a little bit like XML Toolbox, but a little bit lighter. But as I say, with any Chrome extension, do a little bit of due diligence, be wary. They are very powerful in what you can do with them and what they can do with your information.
Information is also a good point. Where can people find more resources and documentation?
So for my Chrome extensions, if you go to basically docs.powerdevbox.com, we'll have all the documentation. I'm going to obviously shamelessly plug my blogs. So a lot of my blogs are around good best practices and doing things. I've done the one I would highly recommend. There's two really good ones that I would recommend. One is the 4 steps to building a flow, which talks about the design decisions. So really useful, and that embeds in with using these tools as well. And the other one is a principle which I call the direct methodology, and it's all about simplifying and minimizing your flows. If you follow those principles, things like code reviews are really easy, and you can do things a lot quicker. So yeah, shamelessly plug some of my blogs, have a look on them.
Great, thank you.
Yes, perfect. I think we are going to our next topic. This is the Power Automation Center of Power Automation Center, sorry. And Isabel, we talked in our last show about this, and we got a lot of questions regarding to that. Could you show us some insights today?
Yes. So I actually had a client once said, I wish there was a tool that could just show all my flow runs, like in tenant-wide, and the analytics behind them. Well, Microsoft heard us and they delivered. So now in the back end, there are Dataverse table that store both cloud and desktop flow runs. Well, fun fact, desktop flow run data like run history and work queues has always lived in Dataverse, but cloud flow run history, that's new. It just became available in Dataverse earlier this year. So, and that brings us to the Automation Center. It is built to give you like an easy to digest view of your flow activity, and plus some awesome like premium features like work queues and recommendations. So as you can see on this screen here, this is the Automation Center with the overview tab showing, the top level of flows, how many flow runs, how many errors. You can filter by, let's see, open that up. There you go. We can filter by different type of trigger types. We can do scheduled, instant, or automated. And then you can also go through all different flows. You can check by a specific flow. Then can apply it. I don't think those are the same trigger types, so let's remove that. So luckily there's no failures, which is awesome for the past 7 days. And over here on the runs, it'll show you all the flow run histories of all the flows. Right now we have this selection. When you click on it, you can see more details, like flow runs. This is a client automation center, so I am not going to try to click on that. But moving on, there are some process maps. Not sure if you have dived into that. Well, just a quick heads up that your flows needs to be inside a solution to be seen in Dataverse, obviously. So this is everything over here is built on Dataverse tables. And then moving on to the process maps. Over here. So this is my dev environment with runs, process maps over here. So this is kind of like a visual of your flow. So you have the parent and then this is a child flow over here. You can click on it. And usually it would say the different type of connections. And if we were to create a new process map, you can select a flow. So one thing about the process map is that it only shows one flow at a time. So you really have to go from the top level down. So this is really good when you have 20 workflows and you don't know what have triggered what. So this is really good just to see what is going on each one of them. So that is a quick walkthrough of the Automation Center. Any questions, please leave them in the comments below. But let's pass it over to Fortu to see what questions are coming in from the chat.
Yeah, one
they are
short
flowing
question.
in.
Sorry, one short question to this, to where the user can find the Automation Center. I think this is a missing point.
Yes, if I were to move this over. And sorry, I have a lot of tabs. It is on the left side of the Power Automate. If you don't see it here, you probably have to go to here and discover all, and then Automation Center. So the Automation Center is generally available. So if you're GCC and higher, this feature is not available.
Good. So thank you very much, Isabel. Given the time, I think that we need to move over to the Q&A session, and especially as mentioned before, I need to basically say that we limit our questions this time to 3. Last time it was a bit too long, and people tend to do other things as well, not only listen to us, which is sad, but it's okay. I accept this. So let's move over to our 3 questions that we selected. The very first one, I think it's referring to the Power Automate tool extension. The question was, does it also work with Power Apps?
Nope, but there is a version for Power Apps. So there's a app review which does Chrome extension again for Power Apps, a little bit more restricted. And then I'm working on what we call a Pro version, which gives you kind of things like custom settings and things like that. So there's a Pro version for Power Apps. Hopefully there'll be a Pro version for Auto Review as well soon, but 2 different systems, so they're kind of quite different.
Okay, thank you very much.
That sounds really good. Could you send us the link and we will post it in the show notes too?
Yeah, no problem.
The next one, I think that's a bit for the programmers here. What alternative actions would you prefer to use instead of compose?
Well, the question is, why do you need a compose? Most of the time, compose has an input and an output. So you just put the output of the compose in where you put the input of the compose, where you put the output of the compose.
This is how professional streamers always answer. You always start to ask, why do you ask those questions in the first place? Is there a, this is a, let's define compose. So this is also a way, but it's good.
But if you think about it, a compose is just a step, and you have an input and then an output. Well, the question I always ask people is the input to the compose. Why do you not put that into where you put the output of the compose? And except for unions and certain kind of things, most of the time, your input to your output, you can just move it to where you put the output of the compose, and it works fine.
I accept at least a maximum 1 compose, and then it's enough for me personally. That's my honest opinion. At this point, I stop. If I say as soon as I see the second compose, I stop. I say it's not my topic anymore. Okay. Yeah, this is a wonderful question from Christian. Thank you very much, because as soon as Marcel saw it, I like this question. So can we use those tools in VS Code as well?
So your code editor, there is a Logic App version that you can basically, like an extension of VS Code, which does pretty much the same thing, because Power Automate uses Logic Apps. It's the same definition, same everything. Auto Review, there is a VS Code extension version. So if you go into VS Code and search for Auto Review, you see it there. It's a lot more limited, but it does some basic things. And then things like your JSON, there's pretty fire. There's probably hundreds that do that for you. But yes, if you can't find anything for Power Automate, search for Logic Apps. They are often the same answer. So yeah, that's what I recommend.
Cool, thank you. So I think that concludes basically the Q&A session for today.
Well, David, this has been fantastic. This is new tools to me, honestly. I'll be using it today to just try it out. So before we wrap up, what is your next roadmap?
Like I say, so I'm working on kind of these pro versions, trying to be a little bit more effort into them, more of them being kind of developer tools. So App Review Pro has just come out, and that, like I say, allows you to do kind of more interesting things like read the YAML out of your Power App and copy and paste it. You can get Markdown for documentation, and you can make your very own checks, so you can code review it exactly how you want to do. And the plan eventually is to do the same for auto review. So it's limited at the moment by what I think a code review should be. The idea is that you'll be able to build your very own, whatever you want to check for, you can basically build in there. So that's the next plan to hopefully come out soon.
Perfect. So for our viewers, I highly recommended your tools. I like them. So I think it's for every Power Automate developer, well documented. We get much more deep dives. It fills gaps, as I said before, regarding to a center of excellence. And thank you for that. And I think the most important point, you writing amazing articles on Dev.2, and everyone should read them. So if you want to get more information from David regarding to Power Platform governance and other topics, you've found a lot of articles on Dev.2.
Thank you.
I really hate to agree to Marcel, but he is absolutely right. Links to all of David tools already been fired all the time in the chat by Mirko, but you will also find them in the show notes. David, thank you very much for joining us today and for creating those incredible resources for the community.
Thank you for inviting me on.
Thank you. That concludes our meeting here. So hopefully we'll see you guys next time.
Yeah, and one last point to next time. We have on 21st of August and I would say an M365 tools session with Amy Diamond regarding to SharePoint features with the MVPs Nicole Wiske and Tanja Wiehoff with me together. And I know Fortu works on an D365 show, you can say 2 words to that. And our next Power Platform M365 shows on the 4th of September with Howding Rashid from, regarding with the topic Career Groove in the Power Platform space. I think a lot of shows are coming. Tune in and see us again.
Well, don't forget to subscribe.